I believe we're on Lecture Z2. Exciting. I've never gotten past Z2 in a year. I've never had to get to Z3 and Z4, and obviously there's room to grow. That'll be my goal next semester. Alrighty, so the class that we need is called the desktop class. Right, desktop equals new desktop. And yep, you don't know what a desktop is, so we'll add the import for it, and I'm just going to change it to, it'd be cool if we could just put java.star and it'd bring everything in and we'd never have to specify another thing again. Don't think it works that way, but let's do that. And what are you complaining about? You're probably complaining that you want this stuff put in a try block. Desktop has private access in desktop. Is that so? Just a sec. Oh, I'm so sorry. It's desktop.getDesktop. It's called a factory class sometimes. It's when you make a class that rather than have a constructor, it has a get. And lowercase t. Tell you what, fill in the blank's always nice. How come it's not filling in my blank? Well, maybe it'll start filling in the blank after I get it to compile successfully. Let's find out. No. All right, off to a bad start. Cannot find symbol. Okay, java.desktop. That gonna help you? Why are you saying cannot find symbol? All right, lecture is concluded. Mm-hmm. Oh, it's because it's not new. If you're doing this, right, that'd be like if we did this. If we wrote a class and we did not want it to be able to be constructed, you could do this. Private my class. And then it would be impossible to make an object of that type. Right? If I went down here and I did my class MC is equal to new my class, it's going to tell me that I can't do that. My class has private access, so it just won't let me do that. So I need to return something that will create an object of my type. And those are called factory methods. So public, and it needs to return an object of my class type. And what am I going to call it? Get mine. And it creates a new my class object, which it's allowed to do, since although this has private access, we're in that class, so it'll work, right? My class ret is equal to new my class, and then just return that. And then when we want to get a new object, we call, oh, and we would want to make this static. Why would it need to be static? So that we could access it by its class name, because we can't get an instance of it. It won't let us get an instance of it with the constructor. So now we can do my class dot get mine. And now we have a my class object. Why would you do that? Why would you rather do that than this? Well, I don't know. Let's go Google up why use a factory rather than a constructor. The factory method is a smart way to create objects in Java, provides several advantages over the traditional approach of creating them using constructors. Oh, well, this sounds good. I wait with bated breath, whatever that means. Baited doesn't mean like fish hook. It means with you're holding your breath. I just found that out. That's why it's spelled differently. All right, now I feel like an English guru. Why aren't you loading up? I can't chatter this long. Use a factory method when a class cannot anticipate the class of the object it must create. Well, I guess that's fair. Like you have a constellation of related classes that are all inherited from some type, and you don't know whether you're going to be returning a tiger or a lion or a house cat. Or if a class wants its subclasses to specify the objects it creates, or classes delegate responsibility to one of several helper. Okay, well, that's getting a little bit obscure. Anyways, so these are part of what are known as design patterns. And we really need to teach a 16-week course on design patterns. So as soon as we become a 4-year college, hit me up on it and we'll do it. So design patterns in Java. What are design patterns? Design patterns are kind of pre-rolled architectures that you can use for solving certain problems. So, and they were spawned by a book, the first design pattern book, and it comes from the idea of an older book called Design Patterns. Like if you're going to, I am getting way off the track, but do we mind? I don't know. If you're going to have a long hallway, then it's a good idea to have, if you're going to have a waiting room, then you can try to open up the waiting room so that the place looks like it's more airy or something like that. So it doesn't look more dreary. And I have absolutely no idea. It's been a while since I've seen this explained and I need to read it. But it's, common architectural, so that if you need to design a waiting room in a long hallway, then you have, you can flip to page 75 of your design patterns manual and go, okay, yeah, that's what a waiting room in a long hallway ought to do. It ought to have these characteristics. Same thing for software. All right, how do I stop drawing? All right, so they're reusable. They provide solutions that help define the system architecture. And so if you know design patterns and you're plugged into a group who's used those design patterns in their projects, then you can sit right down. So there's a way to try to break down complex problems. Categorization. Well, the factory pattern and the abstract factory pattern and the singleton pattern. A singleton is an interesting kind of object where you can have one and only one of it in your class. And if you try to create more objects of that type, you would instead get that one that was already created. And some people think that's horrible. Anyways, I'm not going to go on in this. If you feel like it, then read up on design patterns. It really can be a good thing. And I wish that I hadn't thought of it before. But when we get to this late stage game where we're just, looking for fun things to do in Java, and I'm not doing them because they're fun, I'm doing them to illustrate the idea that you can build these projects, that incorporate the stuff that the Java libraries have already built into them. It'd be a good idea to veer off and to look at it at some design patterns. Be that as it may, they're using Git Desktop here. And maybe it's because Git Desktop is a singleton where you can only have one desktop. And so you shouldn't be making new desktops every time somebody wants one, because the operating system just has one set of things, right? You just have one operating system. That's my guess as to why they've implemented it as a factory rather than as a constructor. Okay, so and this is private to disable object creation. All right. Well, here we are where we should have been 10 minutes ago when we were trying to create our desktop object. Let's just type desktop dot and see what all pops up. Add app event listener. Nah. Browse. Opens a folder containing the file and selects it in the default system file manager. Now I was having some trouble getting that to work, and then finally I got it to work. It seems like the files that are actually in the NetBeans project directory, it didn't work with, and I don't know why. But files on the desktop, it worked with just fine, and I'm sure that I was just doing something wrong. So let's pick a file that's on the desktop. What is my current working directory? Remind me how to increase the size. All right. So this is my current working directory right here. I'm just going to copy that. And y'all are using Windows, so your work directories will look a lot different. Let me launch one of those. Whoops, sorry. Lindy, I'm letting everybody see what you sent me. Here we go. Go away and please launch Windows proper. Right, there's your command prompt, which you can get to always just by hitting the magnifying glass and typing in CMD. And you can do dir if you want. I mean, your path is already here. And so if I wanted to open this file, whereami.txt, then I would just create a path that looked like this. And now I have no confidence this is going to work because this is in the Windows sandbox. And so I'm not going to actually do it, but I'm doing it for your sake. I'm so generous. All right. And so string file name is equal to yours will look different still, right? It'll probably have single slashes. No, double slashes is fine, but you can replace those with single forward slashes. Windows takes either. Windows is non-standard. Everybody else on the planet wants forward slashes. Why is it having to use double slashes? If you remember, then we have those slash ins and slash tabs and stuff like that. The slash means escape character. The backslash means escape character, and you would not want those to be expanded as part of your file string. You don't want a tab in the middle of your file name or something. Okay, and then the file I was going to open is called whereami.txt. I'm actually going to try this. I'm just curious if it's going to work, if I can get a hold of the Windows subsystem on my Mac. So that's my file name. And so the browse command, does it want a file specifier or does it want a file name? What do I mean by that? Okay, it wants a URI. No, I'm talking about browse file directory right now. So it wants a file object. We need to create a file object based on our file name. At a certain point, it's going to start demanding I add exception handling. Doesn't know what a file is. Okay. Add import for java.io.file. I'm going to go back and do these now. Alrighty, I'm going to run it and just make sure that it doesn't crash. It ran. So now I'm going to go ahead and try to launch the desktop browser and have it highlight that file name. So desktop.browse file directory using that file. And system.out.println done. Ooh, and we have an exception. But I'm not surprised. Illegal argument. That file doesn't exist. All right. That's fine because that's in the Windows sandbox. So I'm going to use the one that I was going to use over here. This is going to be my path. And then there's in this directory, there are windows, there are docs, and there are zips and stuff, but I saw a TXT file. ls_star.txt. ls is the same as dir. There it is, lecturex.txt. That'll be the one that I want. So get rid of that. Replace it with lecture z.txt. So desktop is a hook to the operating system so that we can ask the operating system to do things for us. And then we're building the file object based on that file name. And then we're calling the desktop object to open that file. And since it did generate an exception, we could capture that exception if we wanted to, right? If we wanted to prevent our program from crashing. But at this point, I like the program crashing. All right, I'm ready for this to start working now. It doesn't. All right, I had this working right before class started, so shape up. Lecturex.txt. What do you know? I'd be real curious. I know that Linda usually types along with these. If you're going to get it, if you're going to be able to get it to open a file. If you don't, that's fine. Lecturex.txt. And it's taking a while. I'm not sure why it's that slow, but it did launch my file browser, right? With lecturex.txt highlighted. Now here's this thing, sunsetpart1.mov. That's just a lesson that I created last night. It's an MOV file, QuickTime movie. So why don't I try to launch that? Or nah, that's no fun. How about a picture? I want a puppy. I want to find a puppy image. I don't have a puppy. We're a cat family, so puppies are cute. Alrighty, so I'm going to save that in my desktop so it'll be available to me. I'm going to call it puppy.jpg. You ever seen files that actually have the spelling JPEG? And it seems silly to me. I thought everybody agreed on the 3-letter extension. All right, and so I'm going to come back over here and make this say puppy.jpg and see if it launches it. Well, it's not going to launch it, but it's just going to be highlighted. That was dumb. No, it's not going to launch it. So why am I bothered picking a new file, right? Well, that'll be at a future point. I wanted to go ahead and launch that application. So that's another command of the desktop. We'll play with that in a minute. All right, we also saw one called desktop.browse, which launches the default web browser. So that's what that does. So let's build a path. Add import for java.net, sure thing. Okay. Now what's your complaint? We need try catch. Okay, I am going to totally cheat and just add a throws clause. This is terrible programming. It's saying, I don't really care if I get an exception. It's fine for you to crash. So what did it do? It added this throws clause up here so that if this method does get that exception, it doesn't crash then and there, it just kicks the exception back out. And normally you do that in the sub methods that you define so that if you don't want to handle the exception there, we didn't talk enough about exception handling. Takes a while. It opened my desktop browser. Now is it going to open the internet browser as well? No, I never called .browse on it. Well, we've seen how this works, and so I'm going to comment that out, right? We don't need to keep seeing that go. Desktop.browse based on that URL. And let me guess, there's another IO handler that we need to. Oh, I shouldn't be so lame. Anyways, if I feel like fixing it, I could. Right, I could just put this in a try block, and then I could add catches for these exceptions that it's handling up here. So ran, it launched the browser, pointing it to. So what is the URL for a local file? If I go to my desktop and right click on it and say open with Chrome, what does the path look like? You'll be able to do it? I know you can use your browser to open files on your desktop. We've done that before, like when we were playing in Python and creating HTML files. Well, shucky darn. I thought that might be a cheaty way of getting it to open that file. Do we have any PDFs here? Let me grab a PDF out of the downloads directory. Or a PowerPoint, whatever. Yeah, I wanted a PDF. PowerPoint will do though. All right, so chapter 6 .pptx chop. Open that inside Chrome. Oh, this is getting too hard. Safari. Why are none of my browsers here? Okay, forget it. Forget it. If it was an HTML file, maybe it would work. I'm not going to take the time to create an HTML file. But you could create a whole bunch of files on your local directory, and then when the user wanted to view them, you could just pop up the web client, right? And so documentation is often done like that, right? You publish your documentation as HTML files, and that's the way JavaDoc works. When I click on my desktop and I right click and I say show JavaDoc, it's just trying to launch a browser to point to an HTML file that's got documentation about that class. Now, apparently I never installed a JavaDoc file, so it can't do it, which is too bad because it works that way. Shucky darn. I know it's possible. Why didn't any of these work? Sometimes I'm too stubborn for my own good. There's a PDF. You can let me open a PDF with the web browser? Well, all right. Google Chrome. Ain't nothing working. How about Safari? Open with Safari. Now that worked, right? And here's the URL for it. Let's copy that URL. Let's come over here and paste it, make a new URL and launch it. URL equals new URI. Put that in there. And you see the syntax, it's not https://rose.edu. It's got a file name. And then let's browse that instead. So what did this do? Launch the default web browser to open the specified URL. That's what that did. I'm going to comment it out because we've proven it works. Now we're going to try this one. Desktop.browse. That. Save it and run it. Oh, and it's launching books. It's actually launching the correct application for it. That's totally wild, right? Okay, so that's a good way to open a file. You're just telling the operating system, you give it a URL for a local file rather than an HTTPS, and it'll go ahead and launch the file in the application that's registered for files of that extension, right? Since this is a PDF, it's opening it in my book browser. And if it was a TXT file, we've got a JPEG here. We never got that to work. Let's try that. URL equals new URI based on that file name up there. Browse that. Kaboomy, blow up on me. Just fine, be that way, because it doesn't have the file : / in front of it, right? Apparently nowadays we need 3 backslashes in front of it if it's a file. Oh, that makes sense because it's HTTPS : / So this needs to be file : / end quote plus that file name to be a properly constructed universal resource. Alrighty, it ran. Is it going to launch the puppy in an editor? And there we go. Cool deal. Nifty slick, in my humble opinion. All right, so it's working. So I'm going to comment this stuff out. How about y'all? Anybody playing along and getting it working, or playing along and not getting it working, or not playing along? All of the above's fine.
I'm typing along, but I haven't gotten anything to pull up yet.
How about a web server? How about like rose.edu? Did you get that to work?
I got the website and I got a file open.
Oh, cool. So how about you, Lindy? Do you want to work on this? Do you want to share your screen or something like that, or pause for a moment?
I think the problem is just I haven't figured out what file to put on there, so it keeps saying the file doesn't exist.
Okay, all right, that makes sense. But you did get the web browser portion to work. Did you ever get it to load up rose.edu?
Let me check because it was crashing, trying to pull up the other thing first. So, see.
Macs are weird. Why is there no rename command? I mean, save as, because that's all I'm trying to do. Save that. All right, looks like it worked. All right. So I'm going to send this to you in chat on the off chance you want to open it up. I'm so tickled with that. Lindy and Troy, one of y'all was sending a file to the other. Is that how you did it? With the file command inside chat at one time?
Actually, I just copied and pasted it.
All right, I had trouble copying and pasting the code.
And I was able to get the web browser.
Oh, okay, cool. So you just would have to get a correct path.
Yeah.
For it to work. And so you could fuss with that if you want to. The way to get, let me see. Nope, I can't say I know how to do it. The easiest way, right? It'd be cool if inside Windows, You could go point to a file. Up to PowerPoint here. Click Properties. And here's its path. So you could copy its path from there and then tack on its file name. But I would change the backslashes to forward slashes if you do that. I'm seeing backslashes. I mean, we're seeing backslashes because it's Windows, but it's better if the file names are specified with forward slashes so that we don't have to worry about escape sequences. All right, you want to mess with that or shall we go on?
I'm good either way.
All right, let's go ahead. Go ahead and go on.
Yeah,
All
I
right.
can always
How about polling a directory for files?
sounds good to
So
me.
what was my directory? It's users, Jeffrey Thompson desktop. And so if you want to play along with this part, and it would be cool if you got it to work, then inside Windows 10, if you launch a command prompt, then you could type cd desktop or something. You could wander around the directory structure, but a desktop's probably the easiest one to get to. And then you could copy that path. And that's the path that I'm going to use as my root path, except I'm going to do it in the Mac directory structure rather than the Windows directory
I'm
structure.
actually using a Mac.
Oh, you're using a Mac? Well,
Yeah.
why do I keep saying, all right, all right. So you would open up your terminal, right? You do this, open up terminal, come back. The canvas bar is hiding my little search window up there, but I can type blind. There we go. And so it opened up the terminal, and if you type CWD, current work directory, PWD, it tells you where you currently are. And apparently I already had the terminal window open to my desktop, so that's not a big test. Let me try it again. Launch the terminal. PWD tells me where I am. I'm in users Jeffrey Thompson. And if I do ls, I'll get a list of all the files and the directories. And I know there's a way to winnow the ls command down to show only directories, but anyways, you'll probably recognize it. And so cd into your desktop directory, if you have any files on your desktop, and then do pwd again, and that's the path that you're going to copy and paste into your root, or go to whatever directory you want. Something else you can do is, if you have a folder open, silly Mac tricks, go to the folder that you want to get a hold of, and you see you can grab this icon right here and pull it and put it there. So if I type into my terminal cd space, and then I grab that and pull it and drop it there, then it expands it with the path, and I could copy that path out. So does that make sense? Or you can drag any folder from here as well, right? And you can probably drag any file name in there and get the entire file name, except now this time we just want a directory. All right, so we've got lots of options for getting file paths. Go back to Apache. I'm going to declare, I guess I already had a file name up here, but I'm going to make this one string root dir is equal to, paste that. I really want it to be my desktop. Now I need to make a file object out of that. And it sounds weird to make a file out of a directory, but a file object in Java represents just a node on your disk, which can be a file and which can be a directory. And there may even be other things that it can be, because I know that there are links. If you ever feel like it, you could put a link to one directory inside another directory, so that if you CD'd into a link called wormhole, it'd take you back to the desktop, you know, something like that. Anyways, let's make a file from that. File root equals new file based on that root dir. And then let's get a list of files. String array, I think that's what it wants. Let's find out. Root dot list returns an array of strings. And notice that you can set up a file name filter. I don't think we're going to get to do that this time. Or you can get a list of files, which is kind of a cool way of doing it. But first, let's just get a regular list so that we can print it out. So string array file names equals root.list, parentheses and parentheses. And let's print that out. System.out.println, parentheses, arrays.toString, parentheses, file names, close parentheses, semicolon. Now that's going to print it out ugly mode, right? We should print it out with a for loop. But I'm in a hurry. I need to make it stop popping up the browser. And it's displaying all the files and directories in that directory. Comment that out. All right. What else can you do with a file entry? Root dot, not foot dot, root dot create new file. That would create a 0-byte file in that specified path. Or I don't know what it would do if that file path was a directory, if it create a new directory. It might. Don't know. Well, how could it if it was going to make a new file? Anyways, it would create a new file of whatever path that you specified, and I don't know what it would do if that path was a directory. Get absolute path. Get canonical path. Let's do that one. Let's get the canonical path to our desktop. So string can path is equal to root dot get canonical path. And why would you do that? Because your directory can be something other than a fully qualified URL. You could just put dot there. And if you put dot there, it's going to it's going to open up whatever directory your program's running in. And so let's print that out. And let's print out the file names in a better format. Let's not do it that way. So system.out.println, parentheses, quote, path equals, end quote, plus can path. And then let's do a for loop to list out our file names. For string v colon file names system.out.println. I'm going to change that to a printf because we may wind up making this a lot prettier. %s\n, end quote, comma, v. Not print lf. Kind of wish there was an lf so that I wouldn't have to add that \n every time. All right, and here's my files. And why have I forgotten how to zoom in? There we go. So there's my path. User's desktop. I remember now. I changed my path to just the period. And so this is the path in which my Java program is running, right? And when I created my project, so my folder, my NetBeans folder is actually that. And so that's why it's got that. And then these are the files that are inside that. I'm going to go back to making it have desktop in there instead. And in Windows, there are cool things you can do, like opening up %home_dir in %. And when I say like, I don't remember the exact syntax of any of them. But if you do that, then it would switch to your home directory or your desktop directory or your temp directory or whatever based on this macro that you tried to open. That's not a Java feature, that's a Windows operating system feature. All right, so I run it, and here's a list of all my files, or files and directories. All righty. How about if we get it as a list of files, though? That's even more cool. Why is that? Because we could ask that file, are you a file or are you a directory? So although this was cool, I'm going to comment that out because it's just going to clutter up our output. Delete that arrays toString. And instead of getting a list of file names, I want an array of files themselves. So files is equal to root.list files. And let's print those files out. For do I want to do it index based? Yeah, sure. Int I is equal to 0, I is less than files.length, semicolon I++, system.out.printf, parentheses, quote, %2d, that's going to be the I counter, %30f, that s, that's going to be the file name, and then \n, and we're going to put more things in here in a minute. So comma I, comma files subscript I in subscript dot get name. That's just the name of the file rather than the entire path to it. Oh, why are you hanging? Please stop. All right, maybe it'll be there. Get the name of the file, which is just the last name in the path, right? So it's not, doesn't include a directory. Or we could do this, right? String fname equals file subscript I dot get name, parentheses in parentheses, and then just print that there. I meant for that to be fname rather than in name, so. I foresee us adding several more columns like file size and stuff like that. So I'm kind of just setting it up so that will work. All right, and here we go. Of course, it's right justified, which is not what I want. And it's nasty formatted because I have some incredibly long file names. Let's left justify it with a minus sign between that. And let's truncate the file name. Fname equals fname dot substring 0,30. I don't know if that's going to crash or not when the file name isn't 30 long. Let's find out. Yeah, it does. Okay, so fine. If fname.length, parentheses in parentheses, is greater than 30, then just get those 30 characters. And there we go, right? Yeah, it's lame to be cutting off the file names, but what are you going to do? All right. I'd like to see the file sizes. So if it's not a directory, yeah, and how about a column that says whether it's a file or a directory? I can't even think of what I would call that variable. String type. And then if, now I really wish I'd made it a for each loop because I'm having to dereference it every single time. So I may cheat. Let's see if I can do this. File f equals file subscript I. And then I can just refer to f each time rather than doing it by its subscript. That makes sense? And so if f dot is file, then the type is equal to file. Elif f dot is directory. So I'm curious about that is absolute. Test whether this absolute path is absolute. I don't even know. Okay, yeah, it's checking to see whether it's a fully qualified path or not. We don't care about that. So we could probably, an elif. Yeah, we've seen that before, and not in this language. Type is equal to quote dir. Semicolon. Otherwise, if we're going to do that kind of shenanigans, I guess we ought to initialize it. Unknown. We should never see that. All right, so that's a new column. Maybe after the file number, let's print that string. So %s, and it's never going to be more than 4 wide, so %4s there. And so after our index number, we want to print the type. And so we can tell whether these are files or directories. Maybe it should just be a single letter, right? F or D. But anyways, it's working so far. And I guess there's no real reason to truncate it if all of our columns are going to be to the left rather than to the right. So maybe I'll just take that bit out. All right, file size. Let's get the number of bytes in it. So int size is equal to f dot, what's it called, length? Yeah, length, parentheses and parentheses. And if we divided it by 1024, we get the number of kilobytes. You don't like that? Possible long conversion? Okay, yeah, because files can get larger than 2 billion bytes. So that's a pretty large file, a 2 gigabyte file. So do we want to print them in bytes or kilobytes? Take a vote. Who wants to convert them to kilobytes? If you want to convert it to kilobytes, you just divide it by 1024. Size divided by equal to 1024. Well, that's a new column. I don't know what the largest kilobytes that we're going to run into here. So %4d. That's another variable after the index. So let's print out size. That's too small. Those look awfully large. Notice that the file size for directories is 0 because it can't just recursively, magically, go and calculate all these subdirectories file sizes and report it like that. But anyways, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, I'm going to change it to 7 and see if that makes it right. I swear, what would they have been before I divided them? Yeah. Okay, I guess I have some pretty large files here. What are they? Oh, I bet they're lecture recordings. Yeah, they look like lecture recordings. Well, what if we wanted to print the file type, the extension, right? Like .mov and things like that. Well, we ought to be able to get the extension. We're smart enough to be able to do things like that. But some of this stuff we don't even really want to do if it was not a file, but I don't feel like customizing that behavior. Let's get string extension, and we need to find the last period of the file name. So ext is equal to, well, maybe we need to get the index of the last period is equal to fname dot, there should be a last index of. That'll find the last period. Returns the index, and if it's negative, then it's bad. -1 is bad. Okay, so that means it has no extension. Of course, we could just initialize it to like that and then not have to worry about the negative case setting it otherwise. So last index of parentheses, quote, in period, end quote, there, like that. And let's extract it with substring. Ext is equal to fname dot substring beginning at that index +1, right? Because we don't want the extension to begin at that period. It's one past it. So last period +1. Now, I forgot to check to see if last period was negative, because if it's negative, then it means it doesn't have an extension. So if last underscore period, come on, brr, is greater than or equal to 0. I guess you could have something that was only an extension. Can you create a document called .txt with nothing in front of it? I don't know. Anyways, at least it's not going to crash. All right, that's a new column. So percent 4s, our extensions could be no longer than 4. I don't know if that's true. I mean, it's certainly not true, but commonly they're usually 3 letters. And we're going to need to print a header, right, up at the top that shows what these things are. Okay, so here's my file types, right? No wonder that's so large. It's a movie. I'm going to go back and do the division by 1024 because once the numbers get that large, my brain can't process it. I'd want to print it with commas or something. And we could even change it to megabytes if we needed to. But okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Maybe that's wide enough. You may not have files as wide as that, but I'm going to go ahead. Oh, let's make it 8. Give ourselves room to grow. And why don't we write justify the type as well, and the file size. Or I don't know, I kind of like the, definitely whether it's a file or a directory needs to be write justified. And so that's the next one right there. I could just write justify everything as a matter of course and be done, not have to even think about it. All right, and so there we go. We've gotten lots of information. Apparently this txt file is only 1 kilobyte. Why don't we put a header up? All right, so what's my header going to be? It's going to be kind of the same thing, except I'm going to change them all to S's, and then I'm going to actually print words down here. So I'm going to copy my entire printf statement, go up above my loop, paste it, and this is going to be %s. You know what, if I have more than 2 files, 99 files in a directory, that's not enough, but I'm not going to worry about that. And then -4s, -8d, -s. I want them all to be strings so that I can do this. That one's just for the file number. Like if we were going to say, pick a file to open. This is the extension. This is the size. This is the type. And this is the file name. And then we want to do remarkably the same thing with dashes underneath it, but I don't think I'm going to do that. Yeah, I guess it wouldn't take any time. Didn't mean to do that. All righty. That's pretty neat. Do we want to suppress it from printing the zeros if it's a directory? I think I'm not going to bother. We'd have to convert it to a string. And nah, let's not bother. I guess those numbers actually looked better when they were left justified. So for the file sizes, I'm going to remove the justification. They have no justification. But since it can get to be 8 wide, why don't we go ahead and fill it out with 8 of these? 1, 2, 3, 4, like that. And Troy, I remember you asking, how would you programmatically generate these things so that depending upon the sizes of the objects, it would pad it out? That'd be an interesting exercise, but well beyond what we're doing right now. Not hard, right? You just have to build this string and calculate these numbers based on the maximum width of the various elements.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what the keyword is.
All right, so here we go, and it's looking pretty, in my opinion. So we could ask the user for a file to open, and then we could use that browse. Okay, y'all are Python experts. I got to show you something. This is totally off topic, and for those of y'all who haven't taken Python, forgive me for going totally off topic. I could probably wait until after class, but new trick that was introduced as a Python 3.6 a couple of years ago, and I never knew about it. If you do this, x equals 3, and y equals Fred, and then you do print a formatted string where you say the answer is, and then you put a placeholder like this, and you say like x plus 10, comma, and then you want to address them by name. That's all you got to do. It builds the placeholders based on what's between those. And so from now on, I'm going to be teaching all my classes to format their print statements like that, because I think that's just too cool. All right. I'm probably the only person in the world who's as impressed with that as it is, but I'd love to see that in another language too. It's some, I forget what it's called, semantic formatting, where it actually extracts the arguments for the formatting from the text itself. I just think it's cool. So we were always doing this, right? Answer or x equals in comma x. Instead, you would do print x equals curly brace x, like that. Nope, I
That
forgot
is
the F.
much nicer.
I forgot the F in front of it, but yeah, I think it's much nicer. There. Cool. Applause. I love it. All right, we're just about done with this. The last thing I can think of doing. So we don't have time to do a good review for the final exam. And I know that several of y'all have completed a project, so you're going to skip the final. That's cool. Totally cool. But I can't give a good review of it in 5 minutes, so I'm going to record a separate lecture that is a review of the final exam. I'll post the date and the time, so if anybody wants to drop in, they can. Otherwise, it'll just be a lecture. I'll probably do that. I'll do that Friday. Friday afternoon will be when it'll be, but I'll post the exact date and time. All right, so the last thing is let's just ask them what file number they want to open and then try to open it. But if it's a directory, hey, I wonder what that browse would do if we tried to open it. Remember that when we were opening it and we were telling it to highlight a file? What if we tried to get it to highlight a directory? Well, we may not have time to get that to work, but we certainly have time to use the browser to open a file specified. So down here at the bottom, system.out.println parentheses quote backslash which file number to open question mark. Things always start talking like Tarzan or Yoda, whatever. Not good English. Make it printfs or just print so it doesn't go to the next line. We're going to need a scanner. Which is why I should always just import java.util as a matter of course. Now let's get the which. Let's get the file name, because we're going to need the file name to build a URL from it. I think I've tried building a URL based on a file object, and I think it did not work. We can play with that. But anyways, so we need to get the file name, right? String file to open is equal to files subscript I which. How's this? We're not doing any validation of the data whatsoever. Dot get name. We should get the absolute path to it though. Get canonical path so that it'll be fully qualified and specify the directories and stuff like that. And now we can build a URL based on that. And we did that way up here. Right there. So I'm just going to copy those two lines and paste them. And this needs to be called file to open. Hey, if I could disable my touchpad every time a mouse gets plugged in, I'd be happy. All righty. That ought to do it. So which file to open? The movie. So 3. Nah, the movie wasn't impressive. How about the doc? That's file number 26. Or it could just blow up. Drats. Illegal character and path. Alrighty, it doesn't like the spaces in the path. I would need to replace all the spaces with %20s. And this is really annoying, but have you ever looked up in your URL and you see a bunch of %20s in your file name? Or wait, I think it's %32 for space.
I think it's %20s. I've seen them before.
I think it is %20. So once we get our file name, file to open dot replace quote space end quote comma quote %20 end quote. And let's print that out just to make sure that it looks okay. And since strings are immutable, I have to reassign it back to itself. So file2 open equals file2 open dot replace. Pick one. How about the puppy? 31. Well, puppy didn't have a space in its file name, so that wasn't a big test. How about 26, the doc? See, I should put that in a loop so that I could keep opening files. Alrighty, so open file 26. And it seemed to have accepted it. And it opened it up in Word. Cool, I'm gonna use this as my, my file manager from now on. I'm kicking it like 1975 here. Okay, so you see that for a URL to be successful in opening, it can't have any spaces in it. So when you're building it, you have to replace all the spaces with the hexadecimal equivalent of a space. And the ASCII value of a space is 32, which hexadecimal is 20. And you could encode any character with hex if you wanted to. If you wanted to replace the dot with the hexadecimal value of a period, you could go and look it up. Anyway, so if you ever see those in the path that you're looking at in a browser, those are just hexadecimal characters. All righty, I hope this was interesting.
I figured out why mine's not working.
Oh yeah, cool.
It's because Windows path thing.
Oh, yeah. So definitely replace your backward slashes with forward slashes if you're doing it on Windows. Otherwise, you have to do silly nonsense like this. You have to go back in and replace them all with that. And it's really annoying if it's a URL and it's got backslashes because the format of a URL is HTTP colon. It's really forward slashes, right? That's the standard.
I can't get this to work easily, no. I'll have to change the entire formatting of the string. Oh well.
Okay.
It sounds tedious, so I think
Well,
I'll
you
leave
don't
it.
got to do it. I'm going to save this and send it out to y'all just in case anybody wants to play with it. Oh no, I overwrote it. All right. All righty. So what y'all like better, this or the socket, the port scanner, or the multi-threaded stuff, or maybe
All three
the
are
web
really
stuff?
useful.
Yeah, I'm hoping that the concepts will stick around in your head because the way you implement them in languages is different, but the concepts are the same. There's nothing that we've done so far here that we could not have done in Python, for example. None of it, even the multi-threaded processing. So the concepts cross the languages. All right, I need to make a Dropbox for this. And for those of y'all who I'm not going to see in future classes, I hope to see you in future classes. Maybe y'all haven't taken C# yet. So in the fall, there's C#. I guess I'm going to be doing all my online courses as Zoom classes from now on, rather than just recording the lectures, because this is more fun. More fun for me, anyways.
I hope there's a good alternative to Zoom, at least.
Yeah.
This thing crashes.
Yeah, that would be nice. All righty, let me make the Dropbox.
C# is an online only class, right?
That is correct, but I'm going to go ahead and I think Zoom it anyways, just
Okay.
so that people who like attending lectures get a chance to sit down and talk, right?
I was just making sure I enrolled in the right one.
Ooh, I'm going to get you for C#. Yay, that's awesome.
Yep.
All righty. And if y'all wanted a real challenge, you could take the C programming language over the summer. It's kind of like using a hammer where we've been using power tools. It's a much more primitive language, so it's harder to do. So it's an interesting little challenge. All right. I keep
I'm guessing
talking when
that's
I should be
online
making
as well.
this. And Lindy, you're a glutton for punishment. All righty. So I will record a review as well, and I'll post the date and the time that that review is going to happen.